So today we're going to be talking about how was the Baroque style developed differently in Eastern and Western Europe. So we already talked about Baroque a little bit during the Western European and how the Catholic Church used the Baroque art style as a way to draw people back into the Catholic Church. The first question we're going to look at today, though, is how did Baroque art become an expression of power? And this is a picture of Schonbrunn Palace in Vienna, which was the home for the Habsburgs. But the Baroque culture and art grew out of the counter-Catholic Reformation of the later 16th century. And it was meant to be emotional and exuberant and appeal to the senses and delight in very bold and sweeping statements. And a lot of times we see this manifest itself in very dramatic Baroque palaces, which symbolize the age of absolute power. Of course, the epitome of this being Versailles, and then everyone else trying to kind of create their own type of Versailles. So in the 1700s, we see palace building becomes an obsession for the rulers, especially of Central and Eastern Europe, because these are the rulers that kind of feel the need to kind of assert their power or show off their power, and they want to overawe the people with the monarch strength. So Schonbrunn Palace, which is spelt, hold on, it's spelled S-C-H-N-O-N, sorry, B-U-N-N-B-R, sorry, B-R-U-N-N. It was built in 1695. And it was built by Emperor Leopold. And it really was meant to be, like I said, an expression of Habsburg power and Habsburg might. And so here you can see this is the back end of Schonbrunn Palace. So you can see the gardens. And when I went there, this is a picture I took when I was up there, so it was kind of quite a few years ago now. It was under construction, but you can see kind of the scope of the palace and the size of the gardens. Not nearly as large as Versailles, but still pretty darn impressive. These here are the ruins. This I thought was kind of funny. They would make for themselves fake ruins because that was considered like a fashionable thing. So it's supposed to mimic like an old Roman ruin. This is the side of the palace. That's called the Privy Garden. That's where the royal family would be able to walk around. This is kind of inside. You could see this kind of mimics in some ways the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. And then this was just one of the quirkiest things ever. We're standing there in front of Schonbrunn Palace and we hear Glenn Miller music playing, and we look over and it's a band of kids from Japan. So we're like in Austria hearing American big band music played by a Japanese band. So I don't quite understand what was going on, but I thought it would be interesting, so I took a picture of it. Now this is the Royal Palace in Sweden. This is the Royal Palace in Stockholm in Sweden. You can see a little bit of it there. Some of it there. So pretty much everyone had to build their own version of their palace. So now another good example of the palace building. This is another palace of the Habsburgs. This one's kind of interesting because it's literally two palaces, Upper Belvedere and Belvedere. Sorry. That's B-E-L. I don't know why I wrote that weird. But it was the Winter Palace and the Summer Palace. And they were literally built right across from each other. I'll show you a picture. There you can see is one. There you can see is the other one. You can see the front. But I'll show you like there's one palace and there's the other palace. They're like right by each other across the way. So one was the Winter Palace and one was the Summer Palace because, it's just uncivilized to have to live in the same palace all year long. So you go to your palace across the street. But the building is covered with paintings, sculpture, and carvings, which are blended into a total environment. Some absolute monarchs even remodeled their existing capital cities to reflect the royal magnificence. So you would have the palace at the center and all of the roads radiating from the palace lined with imposing government buildings with wide avenues which allow rapid movements of soldiers so revolts could be put down easily. And then along these avenues you'd have expensive shops and department stores. And so there was kind of like the whole palace, the whole Capitol building would be an expression of the power of the king. So now the next question is, how did Peter use St. Petersburg? to express his own power. So this is talking about Russia. So St. Petersburg, we talked about it, well, we're going to talk about it in class, and we're going to talk about the Great Northern War, and how Peter is able to acquire this land at the mouth of the Neva River, where the Neva River meets the Baltic Sea. And he really wanted a comfortable and modern city. And I mentioned this in class, he forces the nobles, or I'm going to mention this in class, he forced the nobles to build townhouses there, depending on how many serfs they owned, indicated what the size of their townhouse was supposed to be. He dictated what the design of the townhouse was supposed to be, dictated what area of the city the townhouse was going to be built. But he built broad, straight avenues, houses all in a line. There was large parks. There were stone bridges and lighting, and each social group lived in their own section of the town. And each of the social groups, different social groups, had to pay to maintain the infrastructure, like the gas lighting, the bridges, the drainage systems, because it's a city that's built on canals. All of that had to be paid for by the people that lived in the neighborhood. So it really was very expensive for the nobles to have to kind of move there. Now, remember I said St. Petersburg is not a perfectly warm water port. So you can see this is the wintertime. You can see some of the ice chunks beginning to melt. But he built two major palaces for himself. Now remember, when he was actually going back to the actual building of St. Petersburg, the building of the capital was an obligation imposed on the people. So 25 to 40,000 men were drafted for 3 months without pay and had to pay a special tax to eat to build the city. Many ran away, many died from starvation, and many died from accidents. Foreign architects, just like we see a lot with Russia, and foreigners being the ones, when we talk about industrialization, to benefit from industrialization, you think about AP World. Foreign architects and urban planners really were the ones to benefit from this. But St. Petersburg does become a majestic and well-planned city, and it combines the Italian and Russian traditions. So Peter had two major palaces that he built for himself. One was the Winter Palace, which is the Hermitage Museum today. Thinking about AP World, this was where the Revolution of 1905 and the Revolution of 1917 happened. So this is the Winter Palace. You can see this large parade ground in front of it. One thing you should notice about Russian Baroque architecture, lots of gold gilt, but also very brightly colored. You can kind of see a little bit better the color of the Winter Palace. It's kind of this greenish blue color. And then he also built his summer palace. The summer palace was called Peterhof. So this was his summer palace, also very richly decorated. This is a view of the Hermitage at night, lit up. And then this palace was actually inhabited by it was built by Peter the Great's granddaughter, and then this was really the palace of Catherine the Great. It's called Tsarski Selo. Selo was the name of the palace. So this was another palace that was built outside of St. Petersburg. Kind of see some of that's the Winter Palace again. And then you could see some of the buildings that were built. That's the interior of this church in St. Petersburg. And this is the square outside the Winter Palace. It's these large, very elaborate square that was developed. But then just to kind of show you a little bit of juxtaposition, this lovely concrete monstrosity would have been built during the communist era. So basically, Elizabeth was Peter's granddaughter, youngest daughter, who built Tsarskoye Selo. She really helps to turn St. Petersburg into a major imperial city, also aided by Catherine the Great, because Peter just kind of got the whole ball rolling, couldn't really complete it all in his lifetime. But the city did grow rapidly. It had about a population of 300,000 by 1782, and it is one of the world's, and at that point it was one of the world's largest cities. So we see the Baroque architecture was used to express the power of the monarchy and to overawe the people with the power and the strength of the monarchy. So think about that question: how is art used to emphasize the power of the ruler? And I'll see you guys in class.